Being that this dinner is sponsored by my wife and I, Le'il Nishmas, our precious daughter Malky Olei Shulam, Avi and Gedalia asked me to speak a few words. Maybe something about Malky. I'm assuming just because of Pastazoi, as we are sponsoring this dinner. This is falling off. Maybe it was just in my own mind, but I was hearing Avi's request come across with a strong emphasis on the few words. But I thought, a few words only about Malky? How do I do that? Nevertheless, after much internal debate and struggle, to speak or not to speak, that being the big question, I ultimately decided to honor Avi's request and just bring out one single point, an important message of some sort to us all from Malky, especially since this is the day of Malky's 4th Yartzeit. My point, however, will come via somewhat of a twisted road, this after all being a twisted parenting gathering. 6 weeks ago, as the Balkoida in our shul was lining the Pasha of Achrei Mois Kedoshim, the Balkoida suddenly brought the lining to a screeching halt. Curious as to the pause, and seeing the Balkoida bending down, looking closer into the Sefer Torah, quite a few people jumped up, including the Rav of the shul. They rushed over to the bima to also have a closer look and see what happened. After a few moments, they rolled up the Sefer Torah, and then, unlike when dressing a Sefer Torah regularly, where the gartel goes on first, and then the mentala, the coat, this time they put on the mentala first, then tied the gartel on the outside of the coat. They put the Sefer Torah back into the Urna Kodesh, took out another one, and continued lining the rest of the Pasha. What indeed was the cause of the pause? During lining, the Balkoida noticed that two letters, a lamed and a yud, were fused together, attached to each other, seemingly without space between them, effectively causing for the Sefer Torah to currently be considered invalidated or puzzle. What was particularly troubling with these two letters, having this issue, is that it was the lamed and the yud from the word Lashem, potentially making it impossible to simply fix this one word, but rather we may be required to rewrite and replace the entire area or section of the Sefer Torah. Because unlike any other word, where a skilled sofer can simply scratch off the defective letters entirely and rewrite them neatly, when it comes to the name of Hashem, that is not permitted, because erasing the letters would consequently also erase Hashem's name. And because the forming of letters in a Sefer Torah needs to be al yadai kesiva, done through writing, v'lo al yadai mechika, and not through erasing, even erasing just the lamed to disconnect it from the yud is not permitted, because it will essentially cause the leftover yud to be considered as it was formed al yadai mechika through erasing. This Sefer Torah was written, the Il Nishmas, Malky Olei Shulam, and brought to this shul 3 years ago on Malky's 1st Yartzeit, and was used ever since for every lining occasion. So besides that, I now had a task to seek out the experts and the poskim to try to figure out what would need to be done to get the Sefer Torah back to a functioning state where it can once again be used for lining. There were many thoughts and questions that went through my mind at the time, such as, how did it happen? Why did it happen? Why this word in particular? Why this pasha in particular? And just like everything else in my life these days, I asked myself, what's the message? What am I supposed to learn from this? Let's pause this and bookmark this story. We'll refer to it as story A and rewind to 4 years earlier. During the week of Shiva, the Klula Rebbe Shlita told me that he plans to be commissioning the writing of a Sefer Torah, Leil Nishmas Malky Olei Shulam, right after Shiva, and for the Achnus Sefer Torah to be right around the first Yartzeit. Amongst the few reasons he gave me for doing so was one he explained in the name of his Holy Father, the Spinker Rebbe, Reb Hershela Zechayna L'Rocha, that writing a Sefer Torah, Leil Nishmas, someone that passed away, without leaving future generations, making Berachas HaTorah on it, lining from it, is in the bechina of, or an aspect of, Sifsoisav Davavas Bekayved, just as learning Divrei Torah in a Sefer published from a Talmud Chacham who passed on. With the mental and emotional state I was in at the time, the only response to the Rebbe that came to mind was, whatever. I was not in a good place, nor was I for a long time thereafter. I was not interested, but figured if he wants to do it, whatever. And I tried to set the whole thought aside. However, the Rebbe followed through, and just 2 days after Shiva, he was at our house with a crew. They set up a Schulis Kesivus Oisius, the ceremony to celebrate the beginning of the writing, and the tedious journey of writing the Sefer Torah, with a goal for it to be completed within a year. Once the ceremony was completed, and everyone left, I once again reverted to a whatever, and I tried to set the whole thought aside. However, setting my thoughts aside became the new challenge of the day, the night, the weeks, and months ahead. I started having countless questions rushing through my brain, none of them leading to comforting places. All the great reasons that Rebbe presented to me about this project made less and less sense day by day. And as if by default, I always reverted to the famous whatever. Whatever now became a very good place to be. It was becoming my personal comfort zone. But as it turned out, I wasn't going to be let off the hook that easily in my newly found whatever comfort zone. As the first Yartzeit and Achnus Sefer Torah progressively neared, I was told that I will need to speak at the event, Val Sepastazoi. I panicked. What will I speak about? The only thoughts and questions running through my mind those days were not very pretty. But then I remembered that a little while earlier, during one of my conversations with Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson Shlita, in reference to other matters, I confided in him and said, Rabbi, I feel I'm in big trouble. It's one thing to have more questions than answers, but lately I feel that I don't have any answers at all. I think I need help. He responded, Rabbi Vremel, I'm not worried about you. Keep asking and keep on digging. You will find the answers you need. So that became my new motto and mission. Over time, all these questions, and in the quest of searching for answers, are what formed my speech for that event, which concluded with me being able to ascertain the core purpose of why one would write a Sefer Torah, the Leil Nishmas, had dearly departed. Let's again pause and bookmark this story. We'll refer to it as story B, and rewind to another 6 years earlier than that. The first time we met Avi, coming from the so-called normal world, we were bewildered by what he said. Some of it absolutely made no sense. I'm pretty sure many of you had the same reaction. And for those that are new, are in that place right now. But after delving into the topic, by reading and listening the materials Avi provided for a long time, even putting the rest of our lives on hold in order to do so, we began to understand the essence of what Avi is teaching people, and what is required of us who are seeking his guidance. And that is, we are not just learning techniques, methodologies, and approaches, but rather we are to be learning to internalize ideas and literally change the way we think and feel. We learn that TP is something you become, because you see things from the proper perspective, and it's not something you just do. Moreover, we learn that as much as the world, as one would hope for healthy outcomes, judged by our own earthly perspectives, that should never be part of the equation. And we learn that TP is a true Torah approach in these situations, and regardless of the results, we need to internalize it. As Rav Yaakov Meir Shechter Shlita once told a set of parents from a struggling child who were bitterly complaining that they have been doing their best in this very approach, which Avi is teaching, and they haven't seen results yet. He responded, outcomes should be of no concern to you. Your job is your job, and that's the only thing that matters. As long as you follow the right approach, even if you never see your desired outcomes, you have properly executed the mission Hashem wants from you. And know that if you do not follow the right approach, even if you ultimately see your desired results, you failed at the mission Hashem tasked you with. I heard this personally from the mother of this boy. We understand this concept well when it relates to a physically ill patient. We never think to provide aid and comfort to the patient solely according to their prognosis. Quite to the contrary. The worse the prognosis, the more we double our efforts of aid and comfort. Yes, of course we hope for positive outcomes. But that is not part of the equation. Rather, we do all that we do despite knowing that outcomes are not guaranteed at all. But only that we want for our loved ones to be as comfortable as possible while they are going through their terrible journey. Consequently, these feelings strongly resonate with the patient, greatly increasing their will to live, boosting their immune system, and strengthening the ability for their body to fight the ailment, improving the prognosis, and increasing chances for healing and survival. And that all happens through real internalization and authentic caring without preconditions as to the ultimate results. A case in point, Malky confronted us one day about seeing Avi. Those were the days before Avi's TP YouTube channel. It was all supposed to be in secret in a cave. The understanding behind this was that if the children know that the parents see Avi, they will be seeing everything as inauthentic. Remarkably though, Malky approached us not about challenging us that we are fake, but to the contrary. She asked, why are you guys going to Avi when you are the best parents in the world? What ensued was a wonderful discussion in which we explained that group is not only for oneself, but just as, if not more important, about parents helping other parents, becoming better at understanding their children's struggles and help them through their difficult journeys. Malky said, if it's to help others, you should go. Just keep my name confidential if you can. So by speaking today, especially if any of my words resonate, I'm following Malky's wishes, her will that I do that. People often easily interchange words as being the same because their real definitions are misunderstood. For example, discipline with punishment, control with chinuch, boundaries with chinuch, and on and on. However, in reality, these are polar opposites. Now, when it comes to Avi teaching people, when it comes to Avi's teaching, people often ask, that's it? No boundaries, no discipline, no chinuch, everything goes? So let's try to understand, what does Avi really teach? Much of this can be deeply understood from the book Spare the Child, authored by the world-renowned chinuch expert Harav Yechiel Yaakobson Shlita. This book originally printed in Hebrew and republished in English 2 years ago. The republishing of this book in English was a 2-year process through the efforts of the Yad Malky Legacy, an organization founded in memory of our dear Malky Ulea Shulam. The first half of the book, roughly 250 pages, is dedicated strictly to the subject of control versus chinuch. Although the mission of the Yad Malky Legacy organization is prevention, so as to help people avoid the need of having the pleasure to ever meet Avi, as wonderful as the person as he is, it is the internalization of Avi's teaching which has led us down the path towards adapting Spare the Child as the core curriculum of the Yad Malky Legacy organization, believing it to be the true authority on the proper Torah approach to what we refer to as chinuch leketchila. Although this book is not written as instructions how to deal with what Avi refers to as stage 4 situations, yet one will get a Torah-based, deep and true understanding of the underlying philosophy of Avi's teachings, especially on the subject of control and boundaries. It painstakingly goes through defining what is considered chinuch and what is considered control. And no, it's not the same. As a matter of fact, they are dramatically opposed. Control is always damaging. It's illogical and goes against the Bria, how it was intended by Hashem. As I'll just run through an excerpt of the book. As it explains, man was created to be a boichet, to operate with free choice. The power of Bechira is the most important part of who we are, and it fundamentally defines the essence and purpose of man. Bechira means that we are free to decide what to want and what not to want. This ultimately morphs into the decision of what we seek in life and what we try to eliminate from our lives. While we might be able to control what a child does and does not do, no one, neither parent, teacher, or even a king, can control the child's inner bechira. We cannot control what he will want and what he will reject, because a person's bechira is the essence of who he is. Losing the power of choice is like losing one's identity as a human being and one's whole point of life. Therefore, we are created with a natural resistance to any form of force, including force that stems from a parent's love or from a teacher's sincere dedication. We were created not to do good, but to choose good. Doing good by force without having chosen to do so is a mechanical and meaningless act. This should make us realize that the distinction between chinuch and control touches on the essence of what man is. Since man is essentially defined as a chooser, not merely a doer, it should be obvious to any parent or mechanech that ultimately his job is not simply to get the child to do the right thing by force or the like. The function of chinuch is to train the child to want to do the right thing and to choose it. A parent or mechanech who disregards this basic point and works only with control is attempting to subdue the child's very identity as a human being. Man is created in such a way that this will simply not work. The idea that chinuch is about shaping the child's inner world rather than just controlling his external actions is obvious, but it may be so obvious that it gets forgotten, as is the case with many of our most basic truths. The bitter mistake of ignoring the child's inner world and focusing only on his external actions creates a reality in which parents and teachers invest major effort which only causes harm. As harsh as this may sound, we cannot afford to sugarcoat this truth or play it down. Control without chinuch equals investing effort to distance the child from ahavas Hashem and avodas Hashem and the way of life we wish to instill in them. Therefore, we see control on its own creates or generates rebellion, and thus is highly damaging. However, control, when followed immediately by chinuch, is okay and less damaging because there's a chinuch value that is achieved, a cost-benefit equation. Therefore, when a situation where chinuch doesn't apply, control is poisoned. It just generates more and more rebellion. So as it relates to us, what we learn from this is that it's not an issue of everything goes or no boundaries, but rather very deliberate guidance not to do damage by attempting to exercise control in situations where chinuch is not the operable word of the day. We also learn that just doing TP because we want to get something out of it is another form of control. However, internalizing and becoming a true TP parent changes your inner essence. The truth shines through that you are here to support your child through their journey, allowing them to concentrate less on issues of you versus them and more on them versus them, on their own healing, stabilization, and growth. We cannot be echad b'peh ve'echad b'lev. Say one thing and think another. We need to heed the words of Shlomo HaMelech, Kamayim punem al punem, kain leiv ve'udam le'udam. Yes, we can be sad because our children are sad, be pained because they are in pain, we can cry because they cry. True empathy, true sympathy, true caring, and true concern is never an issue. What we cannot do is be sad, pained, cry, because they currently don't have the ability to live up to our aspirations. So do we support bad behavior? The answer is absolutely not. We don't support bad behavior. We support our precious child while they go through a journey, sometimes resulting in unhealthy behavior. Do our children wrongfully interpret our support of them? The answer is a resounding no. And this is how I know from Malky. 2 days before Malky's fatal day, on a Thursday evening, while also in the hospital, she said to me, Tati, I want you to know and to rest assured that never ever has the money you have given me been the cause or what has enabled me to use. Besides these words doing me the biggest favor ever, as without hearing them I might have ended up living with an unfounded guilt for the rest of my life, there were two powerful lessons I learned from these words. One, none of our TP guided support has ever given her the message that we're okay with her using, and she knew it all along. Two, our support of her was not the cause of her behavior. Rather, she was on a terrible journey, and while hurting so badly, we gave her support and comfort. So now going back to story B, if anybody is still with me, the speech at the Achnasa Sefer Torah. Without repeating the whole speech, available on YouTube for those that have an extra hour, I'll just summarize the conclusion of that speech, which was to answer why a Sefer Torah is the appropriate Davar Shebekdusha in the Bechina of Sefsoisav Davar B'Zakeved, just as learning Divrei Torah in a Sefer published by a Talmud Chacham that passed on. Because as is stated multiple times in Shas, Kol Talmud Chacham Sha'omrim Davar Shmiya Mepiv B'Olam Hazeh Sefsoisav Davar B'Zakeved. Why? Because it inspires us, we learn from it, we change and become better people, all because of the message we get from the Duvar Shmiyu Mepiv. Need translation? So to hear the lessons to be learned from and through this Sefer Torah, written Le'il Nishmas Malky, is in essence Malky's Shmiyu Mepiyu, and consequently her Sifsaseyo Dovavos Bekevid. Which brings us back to story A. 6 weeks ago, in the middle of learning Parshas Achdei Mos, through Malky's Shmiyo Mepiyo, because of her Sefer Torah becoming temporarily non-functional, in this room we call it dysfunctional, and the lessons revealed through this incident, This is what we learned. And why the coincidence of this all happening, this particular Pasha? Because this is the Pasha of B'Krovei Akudesh. Through my close ones, I will be sanctified. My message will be heard. I took the Sefer Torah to a Rav, an expert in this sugya, who after careful inspections and consideration deemed it as a blemish, such that one can do a shaylas tinuk, which means we would ask a child how he saw it. He then added, it should be a sofer asking the child, because they know how to ask. A shaylas tinuk means you ask a child to look at the blemished area and see if they recognize the letters. When I told the sofer what the Rav said, he questioned why would he suggest for dafka a sofer to do it. He explained that for a child to qualify for a shaylas tinuk, he has to be loy chucham v'loy tipish, not too smart and not too dumb. He must know his aleph base letters well, but he can't know how to read words at all. I made a comment, seems simple, I guess a certain age child. He told me it is not simple at all. There are very few kids that meet those criteria. And the reason he gave was profound. He said that when you ask most kids how they see it, they may not give you an honest answer, but rather the answer that they believe you want them to give you. Children are great at reading your body language and know what they need to say to get your approval. And so there are very few kids that qualify to give a genuine answer, not tainted by your subconscious input. Although with the following, I might somewhat be stepping out of my lane, touching on a subject above my pay grade, I believe I will not be saying something that is entirely incorrect, and whatever needs tweaking, there are many professionals here over this weekend who can do corrections. One in the room. We know babies are very tuned into the facial and body expressions and emotional feedback they get from their caregivers. This is how they make sense of the world and their place in it. This is how they learn all the things they are taught before they ever understand spoken language. They don't understand a joke, but smile when you make one. Laugh when others do, are sad when others are scared when they sense aggravation, annoyance, disgust, anger, or anxiety. As they grow older, just because they learn to talk and listen to speech does not mean they forgot how to read facial and body expressions. It's just that now they read a combination of both. As they grow even older, they may rely primarily on language and less on expression. But we never lose our ability to read body language. And when it comes to people who suffer trauma, who are highly sensitive, they read facial expressions and emotional feedback more so than just the spoken word. This is the tool they use to protect themselves, to differentiate between person or action meant in their best interest or not. Why do I think this way, you might ask, at my pay grade? As I observed Malky, with the trauma she went through, she was a body language expert. She was able to sense true or false, friend or foe in an instant. So through this incident, the shilas that needed to be asked, the responses, explanations, logic and halacha thereof, we learn that authenticity is the key. And we know that authenticity can only come through internalization. Hence the importance to internalize the ideas of TP so that our suffering children will feel and know that it is genuine. What other lessons did I learn from the incident with the Sefer Torah? From how it was dressed somewhat strangely at the time. People are often concerned about the way their suffering children look and dress. When the Sefer Torah was in a dysfunctional state, it wasn't thrown away. Yes, it was dressed visibly different, maybe a little funny, while in the state of brokenness. Yet was placed in the same Aron Kodesh as the others, and considered just as special and holy. It may have had some issues, and therefore dressed funny, but that's not the essence of this Sefer Torah. It had potential, it had future. So too, with our children going through hard times, they may dress differently now. However, they are just as special, just as holy, they have potential, and they have a whole future ahead of them. Furthermore, Chazal tell us that the Uden in the Beis HaMikdash was referred to as Aron Bris Hashem, not because it contained the beautiful, whole, unbroken, and pristine second set of luchas, but only because it had the broken ones lying within. We see it again and again in struggling children that though some of their external actions don't show it, they have this tremendous closeness and reliance on Hashem. They may complain bitterly, but it's about Hashem and to Hashem. Mamish Heilige Neshamas. It was Malky that was so clearly living with Shavisi Hashem Lenegdi Samet. When she said, you, me, and Hashem in the car is equals 3. We should take the HOV lane so that we can make it home before the Zman on Erev Shabbos, a week before her passing. It was Malky when in Tzfas and roaming the art galleries, the only piece that's the one. The only piece of art that caught her attention and she ended up buying it was a simple white hay and a black hay. As to her, it symbolized that Hashem is with her at all times in lightness and darkness. It was Malky when she moved out of her apartment in LA into a sober living setting. She didn't just shelve her mezuzah, but kept it in her purse at all times, as she truly believed it's her shmira. This mezuzah was a gift to her from the Kula Rebbe Shlita for her apartment in LA, and today still beautifully adorns our front door. It was Malky who bought herself and proudly wore a ring with the inscription of Shema Yisrael at all times. It was Malky who resorted to cooking her own kosher meals with Mesidas Nefesh in a rehab that didn't provide the proper support for the level of spirituality and observance she was at. In that same rehab, it was Malky, again, that fasted through Yom Kippur, notwithstanding being dragged to the beach, while her begging and pleading to be allowed to stay behind so she can daven and rest was being ignored. It was Malky who lit candles every Shabbos in that rehab until they stopped providing candles. It was Malky who before TP, when in deep pain, said, I davened and davened, but there is nobody listening. Is there anybody really there? And after TP, lived with the Chazal of Keshem shemevarchem al hatoiv, kach mevarchem al hado. Sorry, the slides are mixed up. As she posted for the whole world, her now famous, God has only 3 answers. Yes, not right now. I have something better planned for you, Malky. Did we hope for an ultimate different outcome? You bet we did. And this is very painful, and at times even too much to bear. But we need to believe that her quantity of years was predetermined by Hashem. Still, and maybe even more importantly, because of our internalization of TP was unconditional, we can truly say that what we saw was a child building upwards day by day in emunah, betochen, and yearning for better days, and in all aspects of growth. Therefore, to a large degree, we must say we and she gained. I can go on and on this subject. I'm less worried about you guys having patience because you're quiet. But I'm afraid Gedalia would take me out of here. So how heilig are these neshamas? They may be broken like the Shivra Luchas. However, just as the Ramban states, Shivra Lichas Chavivim Lifnei HaKudosh Baruch Hu, Hashem has the special love and connection to them. So too Hashem has the special love and connection with these incredible heilige broken neshamas. This brings us to Malky's legacy continuing. Malky always wanted to make something better for someone else. As Rabbi Grossberg, her principal, once said, Malky was the one that came into his office more than any other student in the school, often multiple times a day. That in and of itself was not puzzling, as there is always this someone that is the one visiting the principal's office more than others. What he found astonishing was that she was never in his office for herself, but always trying to make something better for someone else, always trying to explain and negotiate how to better do things to benefit the other girls. And now her legacy carries on through her new means of communication, continuing to advocate on behalf of struggling children. Their parents, grandparents if any, or siblings. I want to leave you with this. It's quite normal that everyone is on a different level of internalization. As much as what we discussed today, your anxieties, your hopes, even your moodiness will kick in from time to time. And as unhelpful as any of it might be, it's still very understandable. So if you are not there yet 100%, by the mere fact that you are here at this event, you are part of this group of tzaddikim and tzidkunias, seeking and receiving training and guidance from a person like Avi and everybody else that is speaking this Shabbaton, with extraordinary moral clarity. You're already doing a lot. You're already sending good vibes to your children. You're already expressing yourself with more appropriate body language. You're already doing what Hashem wants from you, halacha lamasa. May the Rebbeinu Shel Olam, the Chaynan Aduas, provide you all with an abundance of bina, chachma, das, and clarity, so that you may be laser focused on what your child needs the most right now. And may nothing come in the way of your incredible heilige mission. And may we be zoiche to see an abundance of Yiddish nachas from all of our offspring. And may we be zoiche to see the coming of Mashiach and Techiyas Hamaisim speedily in our days.